Culture Club is brought to you by Tropical Ice.
My Lola used to tell me tales of monsters, superstitious beliefs, and impossible worlds that they replace in primary school with towers and dragons and princesses who sleep. She would tell me of the duendes and the vampira, of the manananggal who severs her torso when she flies at night and sucks the fetus straight from a mother's womb. She would share these stories at the dinner table, and the hairs on my arms would rise to her voice. I had been raised by these myths, these creatures, these rumors, these legends, these winds that cry through the loose leaves that scratch the stalks of our sugarcane, heavy with the pressure of their economy. And I learned early on how evil walks and devils speak, how monsters in stories and monsters in real life aren't all that different. See, my mothers did not raise me to be a princess stuck in a castle, waiting for the world to save her. They taught me to be the gods of our ancestral lands, the witches in our jungles, the shadows over our sampaguitas that grow like galaxies on the wild dirt, to be every horrific creature carefully woven into the tapestry of our culture. So while others might cower at their darkness or their power, I learned never to crawl on my hands and knees, face downward, gaze averted, from anything less than the monsters I was raised by. So my name is Via De Fant. I'm from the village of Totu, and I currently work at the University of Guam Press as the marketing and communications director, as the marketing and communications coordinator. And I have both my bachelor's and my master's in English literature from the University of Guam. Sure. So I wrote this poem at the height of my suffering during my master's program. And this was during a time when I was really losing morale and motivation. And I was reading all these really dense texts and spending hours just writing this manuscript that I felt like I wasn't understanding or connecting with. And it showed in my writing because it started to sound flat and really dry and lacking passion. So I decided to step away from all the heavy thinking and just go back to a place of feeling and imagination to remember why I was writing and why it was important. So that's what this poem became. And it's inspired by my mom, who I would spend hours with after dinner just talking about her neighbors in her childhood home who were rumored to be like witches or aswangs, which is a Filipino term for an evil spirit. And in my master's thesis, I explore how folklore and oral myths and traditions are actually rich windows into history, oftentimes a history that's buried under the narratives or the records of the people that are oppressing them. So I wanted to show how these myths are actually not static, but they're these dynamic and accurate markers of culture. And that these horrific creatures are actually demonizations of real people in society who were defamed and targeted by colonizers who would spread these rumors about them being monstrous or evil. So this poem is a love letter to them, to these myths and these creatures in my legends, who it turns out may not have been evil at all, but were actually, people in history that were doing good things. But because of their power and their influence in society, they were targeted by, again, like their oppressors. So yeah, it's kind of the way that I navigate my dissecting of my oral literature, at least in my culture in the Philippines, and examining the history and kind of synthesizing what I found into a more complete picture of what's true. And again, in a more creative way and in a way that's more connected to how oral literature has been passed down. And so my love for poetry started at a very young age. When I was adopted at 3 years old, I didn't know any English. I only knew Tagalog. And I didn't know much about the people who were adopting me. But I remember so clearly this one time where my grandma and my mom, my adoptive mother, they were in Paylesh's shoe store buying me shoes, and it was just me outside with my dad, who at that time was a complete stranger, and I knew nothing about. And so to break the ice, he said, "No way, Jose." And I just remember laughing and being so captivated by that one phrase. And I think I just enjoyed the way that it sounded, the way that it kind of rolled off the tongue. And since then, I just would find any excuse to rhyme words, and that would then turn to rhyming lines and sentences and patterns, and then eventually not rhyming at all and just playing with the rhythm of words. So it really became, poetry became a way that I understood this new world that I had been put into, a new way of understanding English and creativity, and also connecting with my family, who is one of the biggest parts of my, most important parts of my life. I think one of the biggest things that I had to get over was getting rid of this idea of perfection. I mean, Shakespeare wasn't born Shakespeare, Hemingway wasn't born Hemingway, and it's something that you really have to work at. And I think it's a creative medium that's worth pursuing, and writing itself is just a great way to connect with other people. And I know, like in an intimate island setting, it's harder to be more vulnerable with your pieces because you don't know how people that you know might take it, or what may be said about it. But I think it's important to be more vocal about those things we may feel like we need to shield or hide more of, because those are the things that actually we all go through. And to know that someone else is maybe going through something similar. I know I'm speaking so abstract, but these are deep emotions that are hard to share. But when we share them, I think it opens up a dialogue and a means for discussion that in the end is just going to bring us closer together. Just to keep writing. And for myself personally, I felt like I had like this plateau in my writing, and been writing all the same things. But I think that's the time when you need to push even harder and to see where what you're really capable of.
Culture Club is brought to you by Tropical Ice.